Welcome to the Coffee House, where in the next hour, freedom, opportunity, security. Everybody likes them. So why, asks author Bernie Horn in Framing the Future, does the right wing own these terms? For the first time in a quarter century, union membership in the U.S. actually rose slightly last year. But no thanks to the National Labor Relations Board, says one of its own members, Wilma Liebman. Montgomery County, Maryland's executive is praising a deal to bring a major live music venue to Silver Spring. But some public officials, like Councilmember Marc Elrich, say it was a bad process and it's a bad deal. Also, we've got the bluesy sounds of Siobhan Quinn and Michael Bowers, and poetry by Maritza Rivera Cohen, Grant McLeman, and Holly Bass.
His grade in blue-striped seersucker suit. It was plain to see. The hard attention was getting to him when she divulged her greatest asset yet. Silence.
On the Coffee House.
Hi, and welcome to a second look at the Coffee House. So here we are in the thick of the hottest political campaign in recent memory. And once again, the independent voters, or as my guest Bernie Horn calls them, the persuadables, hold the key to victory. Let me pose three political buzzwords: freedom, opportunity, security. Don't you automatically assume these are words coming at you from a conservative candidate? Yes, almost automatically. And almost automatically, these words resonate with the independents, who have swung recent elections to conservatives. Yet progressives have just as many ideas associated with freedom, opportunity, security. They just seem incapable of framing those ideas. Hence, the title of Bernie Horn's new book, Framing the Future. Welcome to the Coffee House.
Thank you.
You're a how-to guy, and this is a how-to book. And briefly, your credentials for being able to tell us how to run a political campaign.
Well, I've been a political consultant for many, many years and helped hundreds of candidates win many offices. But right now, I'm the policy director at the Center for Policy Alternatives, where we help state legislators all over the country to become better legislators and better leaders. And this comes out of that work. Okay.
So now, one of the surprises in reading this book, there's a certain conviction that, at least I had, that the independents, the persuadables, are those voters who can really study the issues, have a sense of making up their mind. And yet you say often they're the least best informed, that they often don't even know who controls Congress.
That's right. There is a poll that's taken every 2 years. It asks voters whether they know who controls the House of Representatives. And every 2 years, the persuadables, or independents, know far less than the partisan Democrats or Republicans. In 2002, only 15% of the persuadables could name who controlled the House, which of course was the Republicans. They had it for 8 years. Everyone should have known that.
And why? I mean, why aren't they more interested?
It's not their thing.
That's why they're independents.
Yes, that's why they're persuadables, is that they're not in the base. When about 40% of Americans are diehard Republicans, about 40% are diehard Democrats. They're going to vote for the Democrat or Republican in the presidential race. Only about 20% will swing one way or the other. And they are the least informed, the least interested. They make their decisions the latest. They don't know the facts as well.
All right, so you call it, the battle is one of ideas rather than information, that it's counterproductive to go at them with a lot of facts. What you need to go at them is with ideas.
Yes, you can't really change people's minds during a campaign. You have to show them that they agree with you already. And that means you have to lead with the ideas that they agree with, ideas like freedom, opportunity, and security, and then show how your policies connect to those values, those principles that they already appreciate. The conservatives know how to do this.
Okay, right. The conservatives, as you point out, they came up with compassionate conservatism. They came up with No Child Left Behind. They came up with the buzzwords of the last several years that have resonated, and the progressives have drawn a blank.
Pretty much. There are some successes. You know, I worked for Sarah Brady some years ago, and we sort of invented the words assault weapons, which, you know, did a good job of framing what those guns were like.
Right. She was the widow of Jim Brady, who was nearly assassinated.
Not widow. They're both still with us.
I'm sorry, not the widow, the wife.
But that's right.
She was almost a widow. He was with Reagan at the time of the assassination attempt. So, okay, so there have been a few successes, but let's go to those three words that you like. Freedom. How should a progressive put that idea, the idea of freedom? How should that be played out?
It should be our fundamental rights, our constitutional rights, our human rights. It is possible to talk about just about anything using the word freedom, but the problem is that progressives, Democrats, they're very uncomfortable with the word. They rarely say freedom. So I think that if we use a limited definition, they'll feel comfortable. Opposing the USA Patriot Act, that's a matter of freedom. Opposing illegal wiretaps, that's our freedom.
Right, because those are curbs on our freedom.
That's right.
That's the hand of government.
Government doesn't belong there. You know, being pro-choice is a matter of freedom. Government doesn't belong in the bedroom. Opportunity is something where the government is a balancing between private parties, like in the economy, making a level playing field, making it fair between one business and an individual or between two businesses. And security is where the government is protecting people who can't reasonably protect themselves. Not just the military and police, but economics.
Looking out for the little guy.
Sure, retirement security and health security and employment security.
Okay, all right. So at one point, in fact, when the progressives tended to be in power, there were progressive ideas and progressive buzzwords, model cities, you know, the Clean Air Act and a variety of other words but it's been, what, 30 years, right?
Yes. Well, you know, the Republicans and conservatives have hired pollsters to do polling and focus groups and dial groups to figure out language like the death tax. And then they take that language and they spread it out to all of the grassroots and the right-wing noise machine, and, you know, they all join in. Progressives aren't going to take orders from anybody. So what I'm doing is I'm giving a frame that individual progressives can understand and use themselves. They don't have to take orders, they can understand it and use it.
Is that just because there's a certain arrogance, the desire not to dumb down in speaking to the voters?
I think it's our motivation. I think that progressives are motivated by, you know, trying to make a better world, and conservatives are trying to improve their own situation. So if you're, you know, if you're the wealthy trying to get more wealthy and you're going to get orders from Karl Rove or Grover Norquist, take it, because it'll help you get richer.
So in some ways it's a question of being slicker.
Well, they are slicker, but what that means is conservatives will use the language to deceive, to manipulate. And I suggest that, you know, that's not us. We shouldn't act that way. We have to use the language in a way that the people listening to it will understand us. It's not a question of using language to manipulate them. But if we say corporate greed, for example, well, we understand that, but the independents, the persuadables, think that's ideological language. So we shouldn't say that because we'll be misunderstood. On the other hand, if you say Wall Street, they understand it just the way we mean it.
Well, greed is sort of a negative word, so you suggest, and freedom a more positive word. Is that part of the dynamic?
Part of it. You know, it's sort of what Barack Obama is doing, and that is, you know, painting a picture of a vision of America, how to reach the American dream, you know, how to make an America that we wish it would be. And you have to use that kind of language.
So, well, Obama's a good example. I mean, the wisdom is that he's the inspirational candidate. Clinton is the experienced candidate, the wonk, the one who knows all the details. And so, do the persuadables anyway want an inspirational candidate?
Well, we'll see. I think that they are both great framers, but Obama kind of naturally uses values like freedom to lift up the argument and to get persuadable voters to be on his side. What Senator Clinton is great at is using language that has been polled and focus grouped and using it very regularly when an issue comes up. Like if abortion comes up, she's going to say it should be safe, legal, and rare, because that works. So Senator Clinton is sort of a master at a certain kind of conventional message framing, and Obama's a master at a different kind.
Is there a question? Is it a matter of being authentic, though, that he appears to be more authentic, that these words come more naturally to him?
It does seem to come naturally to him. I think that's an advantage.
And so those of you who try to rehearse the candidates or frame their message have a more difficult time if there isn't some kind of natural voice that you're working with.
Yes, I mean, we work with candidates all over the country, and we try to train them to do this, and it's easier for some. But if they understand what these words mean, then they feel more comfortable using them.
Okay. On the Republican side, who's doing the better job of appealing to the persuadables?
Well, I don't think that anyone on the Republican side is doing a particularly good job of message framing. McCain appeals to persuadables because the media has framed him as this independent maverick type of person. It isn't what he says, it's what they say about him. And, Huckabee and Romney have been fighting for the Republican base, and they use language that's designed to appeal directly to the base. But that doesn't seem to be enough.
So at this point, we'll say that McCain's getting he's the beneficiary of framing done by someone other than him. Obama seems to be is benefiting from his own ability to frame his message.
Yes, and also, what people project upon him. There is a frame about him being new and exciting, and a lot of people who've never seen him speak believe that he's a charismatic speaker because they've been told he is.
And if the two of them become the nominees, they seem to be the two who appeal most to the persuadables. Any bet as to which one will prevail?
Well, I think that the Democrat will prevail just because of all the devastation that's been, caused in the last 7-8 years by conservatives and Republicans. I think that whoever the Republicans nominate, they'll be stuck with a great deal of that.
Can't escape the past.
They'll try. They will try. I mean, this business of talking about Reagan rather than either Bush is a way of trying to escape the recent past.
Right, got it. Thanks to Bernie Horn, whose new book, Framing the Future. On one hand, it's a little depressing to think that our future, and maybe the world's future, might depend on a few powerful words being presented to a few pivotal voters. And yet, words are ideas, and maybe the future should belong to those who best know how to express them and, yes, best know how to sell them. I'm Howard Cohen, and this has been A Second Look.
Only Christ could love a child so night black and tender, rib meat falling off the bones into a saucy mouth slick with salivation. The rendering of her image cast in Victorian silhouette onto a perfect ivory brooch was also cause for concern. "He don't love me no more," she was said to have shouted from her pinned position, causing consternated looks from those nearby the bearer of her abject beauty. "What y'all looking at?" he snapped back, dandy as ever, his grayed-in blue-striped seersucker suit. It was plain to see. The hard attention was getting to him when she divulged her greatest asset yet: silence. And it was into this weak, wet gaze of bow legs and jelly legs and gaping double-jointed knees she regressed, pulled back her lips to make that special music, that hyena sound, to redress herself pure white cotton lace panties, the moist black loam of his need, filtering through her tarred fingers. Toora-loora, toora, he whistled jauntily, Irish soda bread whiskey jig, singing toora-loora-loora under his breath like incantation. Devils have a magicness when they make that heathen noise, that grunt, ah, help me, so help me. And she knew, too, would pull back her lips for him and let out the sounds, mouth open wide like a hyena, legs and heels kicked high, topsying, tommying, curtsying even. She knew how to treat a man like royalty, a high horse, a giddy-up, go-round, good old. But these days, don't nothing come cheap or easy. You work for your sweat. You work for your time.
Welcome to WorkLife at the Coffee House. This past September, the National Labor Relations Board issued more than 60 decisions that some commentators have referred to as the September Massacre. Labor unions vigorously protested these decisions, picketing the NLRB headquarters and offices around the country with signs saying the NLRB should be shut down for renovations. The labor committees of both the House and the Senate held hearings featuring a sharp debate between board members. Why were NLRB members called to explain themselves before Congress? And what is going on at the NLRB? To address these questions, we are joined by Wilma Liebman, a current member of the NLRB who was originally appointed by President Clinton. I should mention that I served with Wilma as general counsel of the NLRB during the Clinton administration. Wilma, welcome to the Coffee House.
Thank you, Fred.
So first, tell us, what is the National Labor Relations Board? What exactly is it? What does it do?
The National Labor Relations Board is a government agency that was created by an act of Congress in 1935. Its core purpose is to protect the right of workers to organize into unions and to promote the practice of collective bargaining. The board itself is a 5-member board appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate. At any one time, it has 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and the chairman is from the President's party. The board itself operates pretty much like an appellate body in labor law matters, and it has a fair amount of discretion to make policy. The statute itself creates unfair labor practices.
Now, this is the statute that the agency enforces.
That's right.
The National Labor Relations Act.
The Act, right. And I mentioned that Act was first passed in 1935. It was amended in 1947 and has not significantly been amended since 1947. It creates unfair labor practices which are committed by unions or employers, and it sets up a procedure, representation procedures, whereby employees can designate whether they wish to be represented by a union. This includes provisions for secret ballot elections and a certification if the union wins the election.
Okay, well that's a nice quick overview. And why do we care about this? I mean, what is the agency still relevant? Is this something that affects people's lives? Does it affect the quality of their life, the standard of their living? What does it matter?
It matters because the original purpose of this law is as valid today as it was in 1935. The goals of the statute are as valid today. The original purpose of the law was to address inequality between labor and capital. It was enacted during the height of the Great Depression. And clearly the collective bargaining system that it created led to the expansion of the middle class. The system really worked for a number of decades. Today, some 70 plus years after the law was passed, union membership is at a historic low, and wage inequality is probably the highest. Inequality is the highest it's been since the late 1920s. So something clearly has gone wrong. Nonetheless, even though the rate of union representation is very low in the private sector, polling would indicate that workers are interested in representation in the workplace, and they're interested in having a voice in the workplace. A great secret of this law is that it doesn't just protect union members. It protects all workers in the private sector who have a right to get together to try to improve their terms and conditions of employment, whether there's a union on the scene or not.
So the agency obviously has something to do with unions and their ability and their viability, but I gather your sense is that it's not doing a very good job of protecting that right, which sort of brings us around to these cases that I referred to in those opening remarks, the cases that some refer to as the September massacre. What were those cases about?
The September cases have been called the September massacre, and there was a lot of attention to them, but I would say that anyone who was watching the NLRB over the last 4 or 5 years would probably not have been terribly surprised by the September cases, because they were a continuation of a trend which I would characterize as fewer workers having fewer rights under the law with weaker remedies. Clearly, all of the policy choices that have been made over the last few years have created obstacles to union representation, have created obstacles for the collective bargaining system to work, and have pretty much favored employer interests.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of those specifically. You mentioned that it covers, these decisions have led to less coverage, less workers are covered by this law. What do you mean by that? How did those cases have that result? Well,
the statute has definitions of who's an employee covered by the statute, entitled to engage in collective bargaining or to seek unionization. And it excludes supervisors, it excludes independent contractors. And the board has a fair amount of discretion within the language of the statute to define who's covered by the law and who's excluded. In a very landmark decision, the board decided who was a supervisor covered by the law in a series of cases, many of them involving nurses. And the board adopted a statutory definition which was broader supervisory definition than it really had to do, thereby excluding more people than it had to do. It has consistently applied the independent contractor exclusion more broadly than it needs to. And it has consistently excluded people from the coverage of the Act who involve new forms of work. For example, graduate teaching assistants at universities who were seeking to unionize. The board said that they were really primarily students and not employees, even though they taught in return for compensation.
So the gist of these decisions then, in these different categories, is less and less people are being covered by the Act and covered by the protections, and in that sense, their right to join a union is
nullified.
Is nullified by these kinds of decisions. So what would you say if you had to succinctly talk about, you dissented on most of these cases.
I did,
and
all of them.
On the key cases, right. And what's the heart of your difference with the majority opinion here? How would you describe the principles under which you differ with the majority opinions?
I think you could probably characterize the differences on two bases. One is a difference about judicial philosophy. How dynamic do you think the law is? Are you a strict constructionist of the statutory language, or can it be dynamically applied to adapt to changing workplace and economic conditions? How tightly constrained are you by the words of the statute? That was evidenced in a case involving contingent workers and whether the statutory definition of employee and bargaining unit and other words could be expanded to include contingent workers. So that's the first difference, a difference of judicial philosophy. The second would be a difference in policy preferences, whether you really are committed to promoting the collective bargaining system, or whether, as the majority in case after case revealed, you are more inclined to protect the right of employees to reject unionization, to get out of unionization, to get out of representation. The majority has done this in the name of employee free choice.
Okay, well, let's stop there. Those are two obviously fairly significant principles. But now some people have said that the way this agency is set up, that it, new administration comes in, makes new appointments to the agency, so the philosophy changes and it goes back and forth, and this just is built into the nature, and this is just a pendulum that goes back and forth. So what we see now is not significantly different than what's happened in the past. The pendulum is just swinging one way instead of the other. What's your response to that?
I've said that this is more sea change than seesaw. What's going on is much more profound. First of all, it's not just about a change in the law or discontent with the way specific decisions have been decided. It's really about a loss of confidence in the board itself and the legitimacy of the process. When all of the policy choices seem to go one way, anti-organization, anti-collective bargaining, pro-employer interests, subordinating employee rights to employer and business interests. When all policy choices under this statute goes this way, there's a loss of confidence. I would suggest also that the normal seesawing that has gone on over the years is one thing when you have a world and an economy that's relatively stable. But when you have the world economy changing as much as it has over the last 20 years, it's as if the shifts in board law have a much more damaging impact on the protections of the law, because it's as if the pendulum itself is moving with the changing economy. So that what's happening is it's becoming harder for workers to organize, harder for the collective bargaining system to work, and then you have that compounded by a legal regime that seems like it doesn't have a commitment to making the statute work.
Well, but some people say that it's not so much that these interpretations, they say it's the statute itself, that your dissents are like wishful thinking, that it's not, you can't see the results that your dissents indicate are the proper response. How do you answer that?
I would say that there are certainly significant constraints under which we operate. There's a political, judicial climate, an economic climate, which are indifferent or even hostile to collective bargaining. We do operate under constraints, but even within those constraints, I think there is more that can be done, because the board has a certain amount of administrative discretion, and it is failing to maximize its discretion, and by doing that, it's marginalizing statutory rights.
Okay, so we're getting near the end here. What's next for the board? What happens now, and moving into the future, what do you see as happening?
First of all, the board is down to 2 board members, myself and 1 Republican. That's as a result of a term expiring and recess appointments expiring. It's not clear whether there will be more board members appointed during this year. So that is certainly one thing. We have an election coming up, which certainly will determine who's appointed to the board. There's legislative proposals that are pending in Congress. And it appears that Congress is suddenly taking a look at these issues again. These issues seem to be linked to growing wage inequality, the decline of the middle class, so there seems to be more interest in paying attention to this statute.
Well, thank you so much, Wilma Liebman, for joining us. And it does appear that this is a critical moment in labor history. Our laws are not working to promote the critical worker rights and values the law intended, which is one of the reasons for the growing inequality in this country. From where I sit, the NLRB majority under the current administration is part of the problem. Whether the nation's laws can be revived is one of the many important issues that are at stake in the upcoming elections. I am Fred Feinstein, and this has been WorkLife.
Trained in the mind to think only the purest thoughts, I descend to the part they call downtown, past the fast food temples that become just hamburger joints, the party shops that become liquor stores with peeling paint and huge signs, Past the gas stations that even in a country made for cars become almost vacant lots. Past the paraphernalia of the poor, until, thinking less than pure thoughts, I arrive on sidewalks where an unknown hand has thrown people like dice on the blue baize of a summer's evening. Watch out for Snake Eyes. He darts through pockets like ideas darts through the minds of the restless, and may steal your dreams before you're able to buy them. I cross the street, avoiding the taxis carrying the messages of the night, carry my hopes in front in a brown paper bag made for the mind, a mind that is a busy wishbone. I come up to the door, thinking impure thoughts, and knock 3 times.
Cheo learned to run like his life depended on it. His playground was a fenced lot between tenement buildings where trucked-in sand filled the tot box and cushioned his bounding feet under the seesaw. The tar-paved courts melted in the sweltering sun where his rubber-soled keds would stick if he stood still long enough. But basketball and handball were played too hard and too fast for anyone to ever sink into the slowly boiling lava. Girls played hopscotch and double dutch on the sidewalk, where boys, not playing stickball in traffic, hugged the walls ready to catch a flyball glimpse of errant skirts lifting in the dog-day air, exposing bare young legs, already pounding the pavement. I watched Cheo play tag once and was amazed. His arms thrashed at the stagnant air, pushing, shoving, clearing invisible obstacles from his path. His head dodged stray bullets and his feet thrust him forward like a blast from a silent cannon, propelling him out of reach. As he panted for breath, sweat gushed like blood from a fresh wound, but he was safe. Cheo learned to run like his life depended on it, and it served him well on city streets where playing isn't always just for fun.
Welcome to the forum at the Coffee House, where we're going to explore the use of public dollars to attract private development. Both free market advocates and many progressives consider such subsidies, like tax breaks, nothing but wasteful corporate welfare. But there are examples where subsidies play a key role in popular development plans, like turning a long declining downtown Silver Spring, Maryland into an increasingly vibrant arts and entertainment district. But when should public officials turn off the subsidy faucet? A case in point, again in downtown Silver Spring. The county executive and governor agreed to kick in $8 million and provide substantially discounted rental terms to attract a mega Los Angeles company, Live Nation, to build and operate a 2,000-person live music hall in an historic but vacant building. The county executive argues the deal will net the county $1.6 million annually. Not everyone agrees that this is such a good deal, and some members of the county council, like at-large member Marc Elrich, fault the process, especially the unwillingness of the county to entertain a competitive, albeit late, bid by a successful local live music promoter. Welcome, Marc, back to the Coffee House.
How you doing?
You've said that the county executive is hyping the numbers here, hyping the benefits. What do you mean by that?
He's using pretty non-traditional accounting methods. I mean, you would never, for example, count the utilities paid as return on investment. That's just not the way it works in the real world.
What do you mean, the utilities paid?
So they're saying that Live Nation agrees to pay the utilities. So on their balance sheet of benefit to the county is Live Nation paying the utilities. Well, this is essentially a Live Nation venue. The county is reserving 36 nights out of 365 days for the community. So the fact that they're paying the utilities and the maintenance on something which they're using is pretty traditional in the business world, and that would not normally be counted as somebody's return on investment. Return on investment would be more traditionally, am I getting more than I put into this project? Not this rebate on utilities. They said there are going to be $30,000, $45,000 jobs there. And I've asked around that the people, you know, in the bars and clubs, and they don't see $30,000, $45,000 jobs. Their bouncers and their waiters and waitresses don't make anywhere near that kind of money. So I don't see that as really being real. And the benefit for the restaurants, I think, is really questionable. Again, certainly on Friday and Saturday night, and to some extent on Thursday night, there are waiting lines at all these restaurants. It's not like there's room for 1,000 or 2,000 patrons, even if they wanted to eat in Silver Spring, to eat at the restaurants that are there, because there's not room. So I don't see this as spilling over in some massive boon to places that have no room for these folks anyway. So I think it's very creative. I mean, I don't think it's a money loser, but to go from being, you know, basically break even and paying the interest on the debt to hyping this as $1 million a year for the county, that's a bit of a stretch.
But the county does end up owning the facility.
As it should. I mean, this is supposed to be an amenity. So what good would it be as an amenity if after 16 years, which was in the original deal, it had gone over to Live Nation? I mean, this deal today is better than the deal they theoretically agreed to back in the fall. But the only reason this deal is better is because myself and other people said how outrageous the other deal was.
Let's walk back in time, because this is a deal that followed on long negotiations that took place between the former county executive, Doug Duncan, and the Birchmere, which is in Alexandria. And they were talking about setting up another venue in Silver Spring, a kind of folksy, acoustic style, cabaret style club, perhaps like the one in Alexandria. That deal fell through. Was that a better deal?
It was a different deal. I mean, essentially the economics between these two deals aren't very different. You still have waiters and waitresses and bouncers. That's the same. This club is a little bit larger, so you've got more people coming in. On the other hand, the Birchmere was going to have a restaurant originally, so you'd be selling more food. This club is, you know, come in and stand up, drink for 3 hours, and leave. There's no food going, you know, real food going across the counter there. So it's hard to say whether this is, you know, dramatically better, much better. I mean, to me, it's about the same. It's a wash.
But there was such criticism, I think, of the county executive after he dropped the negotiations with the Birchmere, that you get the sense that perhaps this Live Nation deal, at least the initial version of it, was slapped together in order to offer the community something to say, look, it wasn't such a bad thing to lose the Birchmere deal.
You know, as soon as it looked like the Birchmere deal was going down, I actually wrote a letter to the executive. What I asked him to do is say, look, you know, if this is going to go, it goes. But let's have a public process. Let's put on the table, what's the county going to contribute? What does the county want? How many nights do we want? How much, you know, what do we want for public use? What do we expect in terms of rent? What are we willing to kick in terms of subsidy dollars? And put it out for bid, and have a community group look at the bidders that come in and let the community help decide, you know, who's the best fit for this venue. Because this is really different. These two clubs, if you're talking about 930 or Live Nation, is different than the Birchmere. The Birchmere is sort of, you think of it as like the Cellar Door, like Blues Alley. It has a certain ambiance about it. It's not, let's say it's more like AFI Theater.
It's a sit-down location. Yeah. It's a restaurant.
But it's got a panache to it. I mean, you know, there was something associated with it. It's not. It would be like comparing AFI to Majestic Theaters. They're both theaters. Right. They're not the same. One has a different atmosphere than the other.
When Live Nation talks about what they're building in Silver Spring, it's the Fillmore franchise. It's the Fillmore brand that they're promoting, which is a corporate vision as opposed to a music vision.
Yeah, I mean, it's their music vision. I mean, I remember the Fillmore in New York. I'm old enough to remember that. And, you know, and they had cool bands playing there. And you know, between Live Nation and 930, they have similar type acts they attract. As you know, to me, the issue is not 930 or Live Nation. To me, the issue is the deal. And would we have gotten a better deal had we gone through a public process? At the end of the day, if Live Nation had won an open competition, then they would have won an open competition. But this was never open.
This was a sole source deal.
It was a sole source deal, but to me, one of the things that's very disturbing is I've seen a drawing of Live Nation's proposal for this. The drawing is dated in July, before the plug was pulled on the Birchmere, which tells me that somebody was talking to Live Nation before they decided to pull the plug on the Birch Fair. Now that wasn't supposed to be happening. In fact, they said we wouldn't dare talk to the 930 Club because we're dealing with Live Nation and that wouldn't be honorable. Well, something doesn't square.
And the reason you keep mentioning the 930 Club is because Seth Hurwitz, who is the owner of the 930 Club, has come forward and said, I would like to make an offer, and a better offer than Live Nation is making for this venue.
Right, and he does. He's offered more money, twice the rent. He's offered to take $2 million less in public subsidy. I'm having a hard time understanding why we're not willing to look at that deal.
Well, the explanation that comes back is that we made this agreement, albeit a non-binding agreement, but if we were to do that, then no one would trust the county in future negotiations.
Well, now that I know that somebody was talking to Live Nation before they closed the door on the Birchmere, I mean, that kind of negates that point. I think more importantly, I think the worst image for the county is to negotiate badly. I mean, to not get your ducks in the row, to not do a competitive process is of more concern to me about the county's image and reputation than whether the county goes through with the deal that was closed before it should have. I mean, they've said that, that Seth and 930 came in late. Well, how do you come in late to a process that was never open? If there was an open process and the guy comes in on the 31st day of a 30-day process and says, I want to bid now, you can't go forward, that's late. But when you never open the door, and when the guy puts his proposal and you say, we've already closed the deal, that's not late to me.
The process from here, is it a done deal, or are there hoops that they still have to jump through in order to make this real?
Well, the council's got to approve this. This is going to take county money, and we're the ones that appropriate the money.
And the state legislature.
And the state legislature. And people in the state legislature might ask the question, why are you requiring more public subsidy than you need and taking less money in than you could get otherwise? That's a fair question. I certainly think people on the council are going to ask that. But I feel, and I said this in the paper, I feel very boxed in by this, because if it's true, if you take the executive's view, that the 930 Club is just a ruse to drive out Live Nation, and if opening this up to a bid, Live Nation's not willing to bid and they walk away, then in fact, they walk away, and if 930 walks away, then you've got nothing. And so you force everybody to be gamblers. I just don't think you make good public policy by forcing people to be gamblers. I mean, this process should have been done right the first time, and now I'm left with, do I want to take a chance on opening the door and getting nothing, or do I go forward with this? Because like I said before, the difference between this and 930 doesn't matter to me. It's the deal.
And most people, I think, looking at it right now would say, well, this is the deal. Well, it's a lot better than what we have now. There isn't a music venue in Silver Spring in the area. Why not have this? It's better than nothing, and it's good music. Why not?
Because this is not the way you do business. This is not the way you should do business. I mean, it's not about Live Nation. It's about the process involved here. And it really is, I think, the critical thing is making sure that everybody should know that the process is open. You don't do business with this with other businesses you're trying to bring to Montgomery County. You don't say, there might be some land, anybody wants to come in, we'll deal with you. The county aggressively goes out and recruits for what it wants. We didn't do any recruiting here. I think Roger's point was, if you were
Roger
looking,
Berliner
on the council, he was like, well, if you were looking for somebody, how come you didn't look at the 930 Club? I mean, they are a rather successful venue, and they're right in our back door.
And the owner lives in Montgomery County.
The owner lives in Montgomery County. And we didn't do any of those things. So, I mean, I think that's the quandary that all of us are in. Do you take this deal because it's there? The only thing I'd say is, this is also the logic that when they tried to shove the American Dream Mall down our throats in Silver Spring, it was like, if you don't take this deal, nothing will come. If you don't take Lloyd Moore's Silver Place, nothing will come. And this is what people always do. It's either you do this or nothing will come. Montgomery County is not the Rust Belt. And we don't need to negotiate like we're the Rust Belt. We have enormous incomes in Montgomery County, lots of disposable money. We've demonstrated how many people are willing to come to downtown Silver Spring. Anybody with half a brain is going to realize that there's money to be made here. You see new restaurants opening. I don't think it was the end of the world. I think we could have done better.
Well, thanks to Montgomery County Council member Marc Elrich for sharing his views on the controversial deal to bring a major live music performance venue to Silver Spring. Everyone wants to see Silver Spring attract national class performers to town. What continues to divide policymakers and the public is at what cost, in dollars and cents, and at what cost to an open and participatory governmental decision-making process. I'm Marc Cohen, and this has been Coffee House Forum.
He drove west to Colorado when he was just 15 in a two-tone Tornado. He caught a tank of gasoline and his head all full of cocaine. Heaven help him, please. Boys will be boys. They have no choice. Boys will be boys anyway. Met a girl in Arizona. She had a ring right through her nose, and her boyfriend tried to warn him, hey, go get a girlfriend of your own. Well, I guess he learned the hard way how that old saying goes. Boys will be boys. They have no choice. Boys will be boys anyway. Child out in the desert on the day he turned 16, and from a payphone out of nowhere he got home in Tennessee. His daddy hung up on the wrong boy. Heaven help him, please. Boys will be boys. They have no choice. Boys will be boys anyway. Boys will be boys. They have no choice. Boys will be boys anyway. Boys will be boys.
Welcome, Siobhan.
Hey there. Thanks
Michael?
so much.
Pleasure to have you here on the Coffee House.
It's great to be here.
I'm gonna guess that's called Boys Will Be Boys, because
Yes,
I've
indeed.
been in this business for a while. So, you know what's fun about this? It's off your new album, and you guys are relatively new to the area, I think.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm not, so this is like, I don't have to like act like, oh, I'm just finding out things for the first time, you know, because I am. And this is really neat. I mean, you guys have sort of emerged on the scene. Let's talk about the album here, and I'll stop driving the camera guys nuts, and I'll hold it steadily. So tell me a little bit about this.
That album was recorded in about 6 weeks, start to finish. We started on December 15th and finished the recording on January 31st.
And it's all original tunes?
No, there are 4 covers on it. There are 12 songs.
Okay.
Actually, the song we just did is by a friend of ours named Scott Carter.
Great
He's
writer
based
out of
in
Nashville.
Nashville, was originally from Baltimore.
Interesting.
We met him at
Interesting
the
that a guy
Kerrville Folk
would-
Festival, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's got Jerry Murata on drums.
Of Peter Gabriel fame. And
Yes, and Steve Szymanski from Planet Bluegrass on Mando, actually.
Where
Chris
can you
Rosser.
get this disc?
CD Baby. You can get it off our website, dreamersloversandoutlaws.com, which
And
is
actually, you can find out a lot more than just about the album on there. We keep a blog going and that type of thing.
Good
and of
segue.
course on iTunes.
Yeah, of course. Okay. How long have you guys been playing music together?
Well, we've been playing music in the same scene for a long time. We got married 3 years ago, and about 2 years ago, we started performing together in public. And we were
you doing
playing
solo
in
stuff
in the
before,
living
or-
room. Yeah,
I was doing solo stuff, and Siobhan was for 10 years with Ben Murray. Ben Murray and Siobhan Quinn.
right. Great guitar slinger.
How did you end up in the Washington area?
That man right there.
I have a daughter here, so
Okay.
we are here
All right.
He has a good
until
history
she
here.
graduates from high school next year. So.
All right.
I love this. I love this area. It's lots of fun, and I came from upstate New York, so this is very different. And
Came south.
there's no snow here.
No.
There's a little bit of snow,
Little.
but there's.
Yeah, not, well, we wouldn't say
there's
today
some
because
stuff.
we never know when this is going to be. This might be in the middle of December sometime. Okay. What are you going to take us out with? What song?
This is a song I wrote in November, right after the elections, when the Virginia Senate race, before it was decided, actually. And I was walking around Old Town Alexandria. We live in Alexandria, Virginia. And it looked to me, it was very warm. There had just been a thunderstorm, and it looked to me like the people on the street had kind of exhaled.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It was sort of a relief, if nothing else, that this was over, all of the negative ads and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there was hope for change. And so we wrote a song that's, I think, a prayer and a promise.
All right. Take us home.
Great, thanks.
For every cold, dark night, for every thunderstorm, there is a calm new light. I say, let it come. For every bloody fight, for every hate-filled tongue, there is a word of peace. I say, let it come, let it come, let it come between us like a soothing breeze, like a sprig of hope from a dove of peace. In this moment, we are face to face. Can we touch the truth? Can we feel the grace? Can we let it come?
For every lonely soul, for every dream that's lost, there is a harbor home. And I say, let it come.
I say, let it come. For every breaking heart,
For every ounce of pain, there is a healing start. And I say, let it come.
I say, let it come. Let it come between us like a soothing breeze, like a sprig of hope from a dove of peace. And in this moment we are face to face. Can we touch the truth? Can we feel the grace? Can we let it come? I say let it come. For every cold, dark night, for every thunderstorm, there is a calm new light. I say let it come.